Welcome to the Missouri River Paddlers Q&A. This year's paddlers venturing out on the Missouri River for spring of 2022 ask specific questions about their journey, and those questions are answered by veteran paddlers of the Missouri River. Enjoy this detailed discussion.
Who's got a question?
Well, I actually have a lot of questions.
Come to the right place.
But first, my questions are really because we're using a boat that's not a normal boat for this. It's not a canoe and it's not a kayak.
Right.
It's and so I wanted to show you just so that my questions you can see what they might be. So it's a 20-foot, 19-foot tandem kayak with outriggers, and it's 10 feet wide with the outriggers like that, which we will have out all the time because we'll have storage on top of the bars. And so the boat from the side looks like that. We won't have the sail all the time, but it can sail. But the other issue is that dagger board comes up and down, but the pedal drive system that we have for it, it's a Hobie, is like 20 inches below the hull. Mm-hmm. They pull out, but the that means that we would have to paddle, which is fine, except for the boat's going to be pretty heavy, and the front person will have limited access. The back person can paddle, but the front person is going to have a little bit of limited access because we'll have storage across here.
Right.
So a lot of my questions are kind of focused because of that.
Yeah.
And
I know you've kind of posted a few on the Facebook page. A lot of them were just concerned about water depth.
That's my biggest concern because I'd like to be able to use the drives, but much of the time, as much as possible, but I don't know what that's going to be like.
Yeah. Well, as I sort of answered in those other questions, even though it's going to be a drought year, I think you're going to be fine with 20 inches of water. But as you're going to shore to camp or stop, obviously it's going to get shallower and shallower.
Right.
Where you're rounding out. So you at some point you're going to have to pull that system up as you pull in each night because it's
right.
You're going to ground out. But I don't foresee it being. You could occasionally hit something, but I think it's going to be so rare. I mean, the odds of hitting a stump in the middle of a 200-foot lake is just like.
Well, the lakes I'm not concerned about because unlike a canoe or a kayak, we like it when it's kind of windy and we can definitely stay way out from shore, and that's fine. But hitting a gravel bar or sand bar or a snag could be expensive because each one of those drives is $1,000. So if we so I mean that's what we're concerned about. But I have a bunch of questions about the river now that you know. Okay, I was wondering. How easy is it on the river to identify the channels, the main channel?
How about Gary and Linda? You want to answer that? Start off.
I think it's a little tricky because it changes when you're coming into the heads of those big reservoirs. We were lucky, I think, in 18 because the water levels were pretty high. So we didn't make any mistakes running aground, but it's hard to know which channel to take, and but we never had to get out and drag.
And you're referring to entering the reservoirs, not the river in itself, right?
Yes.
Like around Williston, getting into Lake Sakakawea.
Yeah, where it braids out. you've got some options, and it's hard to know which one to take.
Okay. Can you, is the main channel, do you think, in those braided areas, is it a different, if you could see it from above, like from a little teeny tiny drone, which I have, to look up and see it, do you think that would be a helpful thing?
I think it would depend on how muddy the water is. I mean, we obviously never were able to look at that, so we don't know.
Right.
And I think, you know, Norm, you may know, those channels could change from year to year too, couldn't they? And they
Oh,
could
yeah.
change
Yeah.
depending on storms and,
Yeah, Alan, I
Yeah.
forget, Alan, when was your departure date?
Well, we're really flexible, so we're going to try to hit on the upswing of the spring runoff as soon as it hits 7,000 cubic feet per second at Fort Benton. Right now, it's between 4 and 5, and last year it hit 7 at right in the middle of May. Well, May 19th is when it hit 7,
I think
7,000.
you stay in that high flow, you'll be all right getting into any of those lakes. I know last year, somebody was kind of late that went, and they had problems getting into from Williston into Lake Sakakawea, but I want to say they were July.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Hey, Amanda, are you on there? Can you have audio? No, she's audio. Now, hey, Andy, how about answering that same question? Did you have problems getting in? You're at high water, so that probably wasn't an issue
Yeah.
anywhere, was it?
Yeah, the braided channels, for example, that Dave Miller talks about in the paddling book, all I saw was the very top few inches of willow trees.
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
going over the top of everything. So that
Okay.
was a problem for me. But even though it was that high water year, further downstream, and I don't remember exactly where, I actually ran aground in the middle of the river kayak where the water was only 6 inches deep or less, 6 inches deep. And I happened to not, it was muddy like Linda was talking about, and I couldn't tell exactly where the tunnel was. And I was approaching a bridge and I couldn't believe it. I was like, what just happened? And I had to get out and walk my kayak off of that sandbar that I hit. Even in that high water year, that was crazy.
Was that between reservoirs? Because I have no idea what the river is like after Fort Peck.
It was between reservoirs. It was,
Okay.
I don't remember exactly where, but it was definitely between reservoirs.
Okay. What time of year was that?
I left again. It was the year of that great flood, and I left July 6th.
Okay,
And
so
so it was probably sometime in mid to late August when I had that happen.
Pretty late.
okay.
The thing is that, like, it seems to me that the one that's given people the most problem has been into Williston, going into Lake Sakakawea,
Mhm.
especially at low water, because it braids so much that I know the people that have gone the last decade have tried to go extreme river right. There's a channel that works its way to, it's called American Legion Park. And that kind of stays open the whole time. But if you get sucked into the other channels, you end up getting in a bunch of willows and all that. But I know they've all made it through. It's just been kind of a challenge. Hey, Mark Fingerhut, you want to answer a question?
Yeah.
Alan was asking about the challenges of getting into the heads of some of the reservoirs. Did you have any problems getting into like Sakakawea or Fort Peck or any of those as far as finding the channel?
Fortunately, with the others, it was a high water year also, so there, where there were channels, there was enough water in any of the channels to take without an issue. I studied Dave's descriptions of those channels in the book quite a bit, thinking I'd have to, like follow his directions to the T, but luckily didn't have to do that too much.
Okay. On the Missouri, how critical is it to have if we're not trying to make super good time, if we're just kind of floating it, but wanting to be able to control the direction of the boat, how challenging is this river if that's our approach? If we didn't use our drives and we just use our paddles, but we're not really going for it, we're more just trying to steer. Is it a big issue?
Mark,
I don't
you want to answer that, or Andy?
I know it's, when I was researching for the trip, one article I read called it a family friendly river. And it definitely is, if you want to take a slow approach like that, it's not going to be a problem.
Okay, because we have unlimited time, and I would rather just try to take it easy, I guess.
On the places where it's trickier.
Yeah, the reservoirs, we're, like I said,
We have an advantage.
yeah, we don't capsize and we have a sail and we can do 8 knots with 3-foot swells. So, I mean, we can do that. We get really wet, but the river part is the part that I just don't know. I'd like to be comfortable and think, yeah, if we don't have to worry about time, that we could just kind of maneuver our boat enough.
What is your time frame? Like, when do you have to be done with it?
Sarah she plays in the symphony, and she needs to be back in
October is our first.
October. So we're going for the Gulf. So, but once we
First, we're going for St. Louis.
yeah, first we're going for Fort Peck. We hope we can get there. And, I mean, like, once we get to the Mississippi, I don't think it's going to be we can make really good time, whether as long as we have a little bit of wind.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, Jim Emanuel, hey, can you answer a question? Hi, Jim.
Hi.
Jim did the river Three Forks to the Gulf of Mexico the same year that Gary and Linda did it. In fact, first time they met was somewhere on the riverbank in the Dakotas.
Hi, Jim.
I think they were hiding out a
Good
tornado.
to see you.
Good for you guys.
Jim, what was your time frame to the Gulf, and did you have any problems getting into any of the reservoirs, like finding the main channel?
No, I had a high water year. I had no problem finding the channel at all. It took me 120 days, Three Forks to the Gulf.
So exactly
So I paddled
four
pretty hard.
months. Yeah.
4 months, I paddled pretty hard.
And you didn't sail at all. And Alan, are you planning on trying to sail on those lakes?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, we're bringing the mast for sure.
Because those that came late, Dave and Keith and Mark, he showed a picture of his boat. It's a catamaran. He's got outriggers on that. So I think he's going to probably do the lakes faster than anybody.
Yeah, they
I
go
mean,
fast.
if you stay in the main channel, if it's not 10-foot seas out there, I don't see it why you couldn't do Sakak and Oahe in 4 or 5 days easy. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't. Does any of you guys that have done the river think that could be a problem? Nah, no comment. So if you're leaving May, June. So yeah, you're allowing like 20% more time than somebody that is not sailing that they've done it. So I think you're safe in your window of time.
Okay.
And I think the only issue you're going to have is getting into an issue, whatever that means, a couple hour challenges getting into Lake Sakakawea. I don't think you're gonna be stuck anywhere.
Can you let Jose out?
Again?
What was that?
Somebody say something? No, go ahead. Another
Um,
question?
you guys mind me keep asking questions?
Go for it.
Okay. Did you guys, are there many insects on the river or just near the shore?
Oh, I don't even recall any. Anyone? Keith Lynch, welcome. You want to say something? Did you have many bugs?
Believe it or not, the bug situation, and I apologize for the dual entries here. On one computer I have the video isn't functioning properly. On the other computer, the audio is not functioning properly. So between both of them, I have my bases covered. But no, I don't really remember insects being problematic other than a few muggy nights in North Dakota. The downstream campground of Sakakawea was pretty challenging, but other than that, it wasn't too bad for me.
Okay.
Incidentally, I want to put Keith on the spot. So Keith paddled from Twin Bridges on the Jefferson River all the way to his home in Dallas, Texas, in like 185 days, down the Jefferson, Missouri, Mississippi, 700 miles up the Red River, and then portaged over in the Trinity River into Dallas. And Keith had never camped nor canoed in his life prior to his trip.
Wow.
And he also won the 2015 Canoe and Kayak Magazine Spirit of Adventure Award.
Oh, cool. Way to go.
His trip is still talked about. He kicked ass on that.
Wow.
Thanks, I appreciate it. And in terms of Alan, I think you're concerned about sort of getting stuck in the muck. Norm was gracious enough to come down and join me on the final leg of the trip, and probably the most challenging, one of the more challenging aspects of the entire trip was getting from the Trinity River into Lake Louisville. Of course, it was a drought condition in Texas at that time, so it was just 1 inch of water and 1 inch of water and 6 inches of mud. So if you run into, and I'm sure you won't run into that situation and getting into Sakakawea, but you just struggle and fight through it, and you'll be just fine.
Did you guys take mud boots?
Yeah, we did have muck boots, which I didn't need those at all in the Missouri. I think it's definitely recommended. I would have some for sure. That's just my opinion. But I didn't have any until later in my trip. And once I did have them, I was like, geez, why haven't I been wearing these the whole time? At least just getting in and out of the boat. Will Garvin, he's not here right now, but he suggested when he paddled, he actually went barefoot. So when I actually was in the boat, I paddled barefoot. But then getting out, of course, I wore shoes.
I had a pair of knee-high wellies I wore probably 90% of the time, especially on the lower Missouri through, Missouri, Kansas, because it's really muddy down there.
Oh.
I mean, extremely muddy. I can't describe it unless you spent time down there. And, like Mark Fingerhut lives down there. He can attest to the amount of mud. And then once I got further into the Montana, I was in my sandals a lot. Again, that was 2004. I did have a drought year. The challenges of getting into the heads of the lakes, it just made it more of a original river bed instead of a flooded reservoir. In fact, I had current at Fort Yates. People were like, holy shit, the river's like 10 miles wide there. And it's like, it was only like 70, maybe 150 feet wide there at Fort Yates. And there was a strong current there. So, and I think in 2004, when I did it, if I remember, it was probably one of the lowest it ever been, but I don't know what it's like now. I can't really say.
Okay.
So, hey, Norm,
knee boots are nice. I hate having wet feet because if your feet are wet all day, you're gonna start. You don't want to get like trench foot or something,
Right.
You know, which can happen being soaked. all
Yeah.
the time. You want to keep your feet dry.
yeah, Crocs worked out for me, and I paddled quite a bit down here on the Missouri, also on the lower end, and they're easy to kick off once you're in your boat, and they stay on pretty well, you know, even through the mud down here at the lower end. I've got a question about the current up there, because we are used to paddling down here where we've got 3 to 4 miles an hour of the current. What kind of average current up there are we looking at?
When were you
Maybe
planning on starting?
Between like when you're going from Three Forks to where the last dam is? I mean, what kind of average current is when you're overall planning? What can you figure any current on that, or?
Oh yeah, there's a good current from out of Three Forks, especially if you hit it in May and first part of June, then it gets slower and slower. Mark Fingerhut, when I paddled with you when you started your trip, when did you start? Like the 18th of May?
Yeah, I think May 21st on the Madison, and then when I got to Three Forks, it was like the 26th or 27th, I think.
Didn't we get down to Tossin Dam in like 4 hours, and that was the first 25 miles?
Yeah, it was moving pretty good that day. Yeah.
So only paddling 4 hours, we did 25 miles. I mean, we could have went till the sunset and put in 50 or 60. But, you know, in Montana, you got a few small lakes that kind of block those currents. You know, you got Austin Dam, you got Canyon Ferry, you got Holter Lake, you got Hauser Lake, and then you got whatever.
Well, we were going to start after at Fort Benton, so we were after all
you guys
that.
are starting in Fort Benton.
Yeah.
You can probably get all the way to the Kip in 2 days, I would think. I think you could do 75, 80 miles a day. Yeah, I think you guys are going to be surprised at how quick you get down there.
Well, we want to go slow through the first part
because it's so pretty.
Right.
Yeah, and my, you know, again, I don't know the background, Alan, and I apologize, your significant other there, but yeah, you know, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I would certainly, and Norm, I'd be curious to kind of hear your perspective, but I would actually start further upstream if time isn't an issue, because really the stretch from Three Forks really to Fort Benton is beautiful, right? So that you're sort of missing out on that opportunity. And so again, I don't know exactly what your boat situation's like in the portage. There's more portages through there, but it's also extremely beautiful.
We also, well, we thought it's kind of in our backyard, so we could do that another time.
In a canoe.
In our canoe instead of in the boat that's got stuff hanging down the bottom.
Well, in the boat,
paddle drive.
The boat weighs 200 pounds, so that makes it a little bit challenging to portage. We actually checked all the portages from Three Forks all the way to Fort Benton. We checked them all, and decided to start in Fort Benton.
And to portage for us, if we have friends helping us, we couldn't just throw this in the back of a pickup. We have to find somebody who's got a little flatbed trailer.
Well, I'm sure Norm would be glad to help portage you around those dams, right, Norm?
For sure. Or Jim, you're down there by Holter.
Yeah.
I
got a flat bottom
thing
for
a little bit.
Who's got another question?
I
have one.
Steve Schnell. How about Steve there up in the corner? Steve Schnell.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of wondering what to expect if it is a low water year, which it's sounding like it is. I mean, I've only paddled on the lower Missouri between Nebraska City and Herman, and to me, like, low water is always like good news in terms of camping possibilities. And yeah, it's mucky, but I that's the time I want to be on the river. But from reading some of what you posted on Facebook, Norm, with like the trees and the lakes, like what should we expect on the upper Missouri with like a low water year? Is there going to be like lots of muck, a lot more walking to like get to a camping spot?
When was your when was your departure date again?
June 1st is kind of my target
You'll
goal to
still
be
have
on.
high water. I don't think you'll see anything that's considered low water till you might even be in North Dakota. My guess. And yeah, it's true that low water is camping everywhere. It's never really an issue. And I don't think anybody that's ever really had a difficult time finding camping, although in the high water, I know like Andy and Mark have well, Andy, that flood year, I mean, the water was a mile from the riverbank. It was back in the towns and stuff. You could paddle through streets and towns and all of that. So yeah, a whole different scenario.
Makes resupplying easier that way, but
Yeah. Hey, Amanda, welcome. You got audio? Can you hear?
Hi. Yeah, for now. I'm in the middle of that thing.
Uh-oh, we lost her. So if she comes back on, Amanda actually just finished. She went solo from Three Forks to the Gulf of Mexico, and she just finished her trip like 9 weeks ago. And I don't think she had any canoeing experience either. And since last year was a drought year, it would have probably been a good intake on that. But I don't recall her having any issues with getting into anything.
So on the topic of camping, if you are going to go like on the Madison or Jefferson, is there any issues camping on the shore there with landowners or anything up on those smaller streams?
Montana has a law, it's the stream access law, that you can camp on any navigable stream in the entire state within the floodplain, within the high water mark. So that's pretty much anywhere.
Okay.
It's pretty obvious to see where the high water is. Just look for debris or where a higher channel was and just camp within that. Yeah, I've never heard of anybody having any private property.
On the Madison, I had to set up camp in a cow pasture one evening, and I kind of walked around to see if there was any landowners there, but just some curious cows was all.
Hey, Amanda, you back on?
Norm,
I don't know if I'm making a start, you guys, or you keep coming and going.
Yeah, your audio's bad. I tell you what, someone else ask another question. I'm gonna Amanda, if you could type it to me and I'll reply.
Text me.
Yeah, I will. So who's got another question?
Norm, the
Hey,
question was, does North Dakota and South Dakota have the same high water as Montana as far as their access rules?
And I honestly don't know that, but being on those reservoirs, man, you just don't see anybody anyway. You know what I mean?
The other would be anyone have any issues with camping on reservation land. And my plan's to avoid it, but I don't mind.
That's a good comment. If you read Dave Miller's book, he had mentions an incident. Is actually an incident I told him about in 2004. I met this guy paddling to the Gulf. They camped within walking distance of Wolf Point. He was basically in town, and that's the I can't think of the reservation up there. Just downstream of Fort Peck Dam. Anyway, he got assaulted. I mean, he woke up in the middle of the night and 4 native guys were carrying his boat away. And he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" So they set the boat down, and then they went back to him. And I don't want to scare anybody, but they beat the heck out of him. And, he ended up having to go get dental work done in Williston. But Dave mentions it in the guidebook. If you guys don't have the guidebook, and I've talked about it too, I'd stay out of, when you leave Fort Peck Reservoir, the reservation on the left side is reservation land, and make sure you're camping on the right side or the south side, and that way you're avoiding an incident. I know John McFarland had an incident where he was shot at on the bridge coming into Wolf Point, and I think Jimmy Manuel, you had an incident where you were shot at too. Is that true?
Yeah, I was shot at in my camp.
And that was across the river. You were on the white man side, right? And got shot at that.
Right. They fired a shot from their side over to my side. And bullet landed right in front of my boat.
But I guess
I
to
would
get
say
you,
don't step foot on the reservation, and don't ever stop in Wolf Point or Poplar, and just kind of haul butt through that section.
Write that down.
That brings up another question, I guess, about bringing any arms. Does anybody bring a pistol or anything with them on this? Or bear spray enough? I wasn't really planning to, but you know, I was thinking bear spray is enough. But
I didn't bring one, and I didn't bring one. I just think they just add to any problem. I know people that have bear spray. I tell people is a good human deterrent. I mean, instead of shooting somebody, at least get them to get out of there. But I think you're okay if you just avoid that reservation out of Wolf Point. You know, the other ones seemed okay. I camped in all those, and I never had an issue. But I always made a purpose of or a point of not being seen. I didn't make a big deal. I didn't try to camp at boat ramps, because that's something I learned week one. The first 4 nights I was at a different boat access site, which is where every high school kid comes down and drinks beer till 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get any sleep. It's going to be loud music. They're going to be wondering what you are and snooping around your gear. So don't even camp at any access points, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And just be more stealth. And I think that's probably the best tip. When you say, Mark, were you pretty stealth in your trip? Finger hut, Mark?
Yeah, pretty stealth. I think my tent was like dark green, which blended into pretty much any background. So that was helpful.
We have a bright red boat.
So I have another question for you about camping then. One of the things that we like about our boat is that we can camp on it.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So, but what's the debris issue like on the lakes? I mean not on the river, as far as trees and stuff like that. Is that when I canoed for 5 days, I don't remember anything like that. But I live next to the Flathead River here, and coming down out of the mountains, when it's runoff, I mean, there's trees all over the place in there. We don't canoe in it at spring runoff, because it's too dangerous.
Yeah, it's high and fast and muddy.
Well, it's the trees, the snags and stuff.
You can't see them because of the mud.
Andy Bew, did you have a problem with trees in that flood year?
I didn't really until I got on the Mississippi. And on the Mississippi, if we had a night of heavy rain, the next day there were lots and lots of logs, way bigger than my kayak. Some of them just barely submerged. So thankfully I only had a few days that were like that. But I want to tell you, on the reservoirs, I didn't experience them so much on the water, but on the shoreline covered in trees that had washed down the flood that year. Some of them like 3 or 4 foot diameter, 40 foot long and stuff that you could tell were just freshly deposited there. So, I mean, depending on the rain and all, you could have an issue like that, but I really didn't experience it on the water until I was on the Mississippi.
Okay.
I mean, we've seen that same thing on the lower end of the Missouri in July. Mark will tell you that. I mean, when the river starts in flood stage down here, in July, we'll see a lot of debris coming down. Usually clears pretty quick, you know, but yeah, some of that stuff you don't want to be in the middle of.
Okay.
I have a question that's doing the river this year, Annie Baltazar. She couldn't make this, but she wanted me to ask what you guys did as far as drinking water, like the strategy you guys had. So maybe, I don't know, Gary and Linda, can you talk about did you filter? Did you just carry it and get it in campgrounds or at people's houses and so forth?
We got everything from campgrounds, so we got all potable water from other supplies. But I did have a system. I could have filtered river water at any point, because I use this kind of, Cliff Jacobson has a system where he uses alum to settle a bucket of water, and then he filters off that. So I was prepared to do that, but we didn't the whole time. We figured 2 gallons a day, a gallon each for both of us, and we would carry probably 9 gallons of water. So we could go 3 days plus before we needed to fill up.
How about Jim? How did you handle drinking water?
I had, the most I had to take was, I think, maybe about 9 or 10 gallons across through the breaks and across the deck. You know, you can fill up at, what's that little boat ramp above the breaks? You can get water there. And then I had enough to get to the dam at Fort Peck. After that, I jettisoned a bunch of my water containers, and you could find water every couple of days after that. But I'd plan on 2 weeks of water from going across through the breaks in Fort Peck. And I didn't filter. I brought a filter, but I never had to use it.
How turbid are the reservoirs?
Reservoirs are pretty clean. The water's pretty clean. I mean, clear. I won't say it's clean, but it's clear.
Okay.
So you're not gonna have a problem really with the sediment.
Okay.
Well, we've heard it's not so great to drink the water even filtered because of agricultural.
That's what I thought too. That's why I didn't drink it. But I thought if in an emergency, I did have a little filter, little hand pump, but never even dug it out.
Okay.
Yeah, same with my 2004 trip. I was gone 6 months and I filtered 1 liter of water, and I just got water in every campground. Anytime I went into town, I had a little backpack with water jugs. I would always top off my water. Even if I still had 3 gallons, if I had an empty jug, I would walk to a campground, pump it up, or at the gas station, at the hill, or the ramp, or somebody. I would always keep the water filled, because again, I don't think those filters take out agricultural herbicides, pesticides, insecticides, and fertilizer out of the water. And I don't know if I'd want to be drinking that for 5-6 months.
When you guys left your boats to go resupply and get water, how did you secure your boat and stuff?
In 2004, I had an entire spray cover for mine that I could kind of cinch down, and I put a laminated, I wish I had it with me. I had a laminated sign with my picture on it, and it says, "Hi, I'm Norm Miller. I'm retracing the Lewis and Clark Trail from St. Louis to the Pacific. This is my home for 6 months. If you need to reach me, here's my phone number. Here's my website. If it's an emergency, contact the local police." And I had that on there, and it was Velcroed on the top. And so people could see it, and they didn't think it was just some vagrant living down by the river with some boat, that it was kind of my home. And I never had an issue. In fact, there was times where I was in a town for 6-7 hours without coming back to my boat, and nobody ever. But again, that doesn't mean it could happen. I know people that have gotten their boats stolen at Williston and had to end their trip there. boats were pushed in the water and somebody had to retrieve them 50 miles downstream kind of thing. So a lock too. I had a cable lock like you get for a bicycle, like 20 feet that I would cable lock it. Usually there's a guardrail of some sort, some metal type post at every boat ramp, and you could cable lock or even a chain with a lock just so it ain't going anywhere. That's what I did. I don't know if Keith, you did anything, or Mark Fingerhut, did you have any secure way of securing or letting people know if you were going in town at all? Or just taking chances?
Yeah, I'm trying to think back, Norm, but yeah, I think you just have to be vigilant about your surroundings and where you are and where you leave your boat and so forth. So that's something I was always extraordinarily nervous about anytime I would leave my boat, but I would never just leave it at a ramp or anything like that. Maybe at a marina, you know, or if it's more a secure location, it's fine. But for the most part, I definitely wouldn't leave it just at a boat ramp and walk into a town. I'd be a little bit more apprehensive about that. So that was sort of my experience. I stashed it a couple times. Was it Culbertson, Montana? There's a you know, things like this, like in Culbertson, there's, I believe, a boat ramp that goes into town, but I didn't, and I wanted to go into town, but I didn't want to leave my boat at the ramp. So like I found some sort of covert location and hid the boat there and kind of covered it up and walked through a field and, you know, found my way into town. So things like that, out of sight, out of mind, right?
Mark, how about you? Did you?
Yeah, kind of goes back to stealth camping. Just pick the right spot to stop at. Don't stop at the main ramp. You know, go a little bit further, find some bushes to kind of conceal your boat. I had like a little cable lock as well that went through a hole in my boat, and I only had to lock it up a couple times just it was in a public area and you couldn't really avoid it. But if somebody could have cut through it in 2 minutes, but it's just more of the visual deterrent. They'll see that and move on probably.
Gary or Linda, did you have any technique on going into town, or did one of you go while the other watched the boat?
Well, I hated to split up.
Yeah.
It felt better if we stuck together. And then, yeah, it leaves the boat at risk, but at least you're together. I had a cable with a lock, and we used that only a few times. Like Mark said, anybody that's serious can snip that off with a tool, but at least it shows that you're trying to be secure and that maybe people will leave you alone. But you know, when you're not with your stuff, it is at some risk, and it's a huge risk. You know, your trip can end if you lose your boat and your gear. So that's unfortunately part of the trip.
But what we would do is we would take our valuables along, cameras, anything that somebody might want to grab really quickly that they could make some money from, and things that we would really miss. So we would take those things with us in a little bag.
Yeah, we'd have, you know, my camera and then David Miller's book.
For firewood, right?
Just in case we had to go to the bathroom with no toilet paper.
You guys are killing me.
Oh, thanks, Dave.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Getting back
I
to
got a question, Norm. Can you hear me?
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, this is Larry Bamer. When I look in my Gaia app on my phone, I got a pretty good perspective of the river, but over in Fort Benton, it's showing some rapids in that. And I have a Kevlar canoe. So I'm kind of wondering, they're showing, you know, all different types of rapids going through there. If we're having a little bit higher water, the 1st of June, somewhere in there, I'll be going through there at some point. What is the deal with those rapids? Why are they showing those on here? Do we have big rapids? Do we have rocks or what?
Are you referring to the rapids upstream of Fort Benton? Because once you get to Fort Benton, there really are no rapids. There are on some old maps, and those rapids were put on there by the steamboat captains because 4 feet of water is really shallow for a steamboat, and it
Sure.
creates a ripple, and they were breaking their boats up and grounding out. But as far as a canoe, it's not an issue.
Okay.
Yeah, if you look at some of those old maps, there's probably 30 sets of rapids between Fort Benton and James Kip, like Dauphin Rapids and
Yeah.
Cabin
Lone
Rapids.
Pine.
They're all because of the steamboats.
Okay.
And I guide up there in the summer out of Fort Benton, and our entire fleet of canoes are Kevlar canoes, and we actually have 2 carbon fiber boats. And we're guiding some people that have never even paddled. So they're
Sure.
taking these down some, by August, it was pretty bony. You could walk across the entire river in a lot of places in late August or versus September. But we didn't hit any rocks. We were able to avoid them. But if you're referring to the rapids upstream of Fort Benton, those are some serious waterfalls that, before they put dams in there, they were the largest series of waterfalls in the United States. It dropped several hundred feet from the town of Fort Benton down to. And that's what Lewis and Clark spent 30 days portaging around in 1805.
Well, these that I noticed were some of those that you mentioned, like Black Bluff,
Yep,
Kips,
Black Eagle.
Homer Rapids, Gallatin, Dolphin Rapids.
Those are down in below Fort Benton.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you're talking about upstream, you're going to want a portage.
Right.
Either get a ride around at Fort Benton or at Great Falls to Canyon Ferry and avoid that series of I can show you pictures, some serious drops.
So you're saying, I'm sorry, so you're saying it was between Great Falls and Canyon Ferry?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, Carter Ferry.
Carter's Ferry. Thanks for
Carter
the
Ferry.
Carter's Ferry. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, hey,
As far as I
Norm, does
know,
that-
everybody
does
on
the,
here.
does the guy Jim, does he still, I forgot his name, Jim,
Jim Mead. Yeah.
yeah, he had the greatest license plate, O2 Canoe, I think is what it was. Does he still do
He
the shuttle
does.
service?
Yeah. So there's a guy, Jim Mead, in Fort Benton or Great Falls.
Great Falls.
That will help. If not, there's probably some other people we can find. But I think everybody on here had help. I think Jim and Keith and Gary and Linda and Mark.
Yeah.
Somebody, you didn't portage each dam and run those rapids, right? You guys either put in at Belt Creek or Carter's Ferry, right? Yeah.
He keeps putting things.
Jim Mead helped us, and his phone number was actually in Dave Miller's book, I think. And so surprisingly enough, it still worked, and talked to his wife, and then Jim picked us up the next day and portaged us.
Oh,
You
Jim
can get a
Manuel?
portage when you get out at, what was that, Great Falls? There's a big sign with numbers that you can call. And we did that, and we could have gotten a portage, but it would have cost us, I think, $150. So we called Jim, and
That's Jimmy Manuel?
No. Jim
Jim
Mead.
Mead.
Jim Mead.
MEADE. I can get you his number after this. I'll send it to you.
Okay, oh yeah, I see Jim and Phyllis Mead.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I got that. Sure, thanks.
I also, or a few of the other moderators of the group, if we have a PDF file of all the river angels or people at all the way to St. Louis, if you guys don't have that, it's got all their phone numbers and emails, like people that can help with portages, resupply with water or a gear drop. If you guys want that list, let me know when this is over, and I can send you the PDF file.
I got that from you. Thanks.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, I have another important question.
Wait, before you go on, just a second, 2 seconds. Could we get maybe information on how to contact Amanda? Because she went all the way, and I have questions about camping around near the Gulf in Alligator Country.
I'll give you her info after this is over. I'll send it.
Okay. What did you guys do for poop?
through Missouri River.
Dug a hole.
Yeah. So most places, that's what and the Missouri, Upper Missouri, you know, they tell you can't do that. You have to have a poop bag and dump it in the two places with dumpsters. But and we can do that. But I'm more like every place else, and especially like in the more civilized part of the Missouri. Is there always a place you can just kind of pull off and get in the brush and do your business?
When you gotta go, right?
Yeah.
The only place that you're required to pack it out is the National Monument from from Fort Benton to Kip. But off the record, I do know that a lot of the expedition paddlers do not carry any type of thing to haul it out because they're going all the way. So they just do a good professional part and dig a good hole far enough away from the water. And that's kind of how it was before it was a national monument 20 years ago. And I think you're okay with that. But again, yeah, just wherever you're camped, away from the water, there's plenty of campgrounds. I mean, I didn't have an issue. And I think everybody was probably the same way, bury it or use a facility somewhere. Anyone want to comment on that that's done the river?
Yeah, I would like, as you know, as a wastewater professional, I'd like to keep things clean. We had a system of wag bags, plastic bag with a little lime, and we could use that, and you could pack that out, but it is a bit of a labor of love. I usually put them under Linda's seat up front.
Yeah.
So she had to deal with it. And then you look for a trash can. You know, usually some of the boat launches will have a place, a dumpster, that you can put it in there, and it's okay to put it in the dumpster. But we were always on the lookout for pit toilets,
porta johns,
and if we saw one at a ramp, we'd pull over.
Okay.
And take advantage of it, but you know, it's a timing issue. But we were able to have a pretty clean run, as I recall.
Some people climb better than others.
Some people did better than others.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Oh, I have another question. What kind of stakes did you use on your tents? I mean, what's the soil like? Could you use regular tent stakes, or did you need to get like sand stakes?
Mark Fingerhut, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I just had a 2-person tent with me, and I had the stakes that it came packaged with. But when I stayed at Jim Emanuel's house, he looked at those stakes and he's like, "Nope, you're gonna need something more substantial." So I went to an Army surplus shop in Great Falls, and they had these 1 foot long big metal stakes, and those really saved my hide a few nights on some of the big lakes with some of the storms. I used my normal tent stakes, but then I used those big 1-footers, and it really held things down.
Okay.
Keith,
what did you use? Can a guy get by using a 20-pound sleeping bag? 20 degree sleeping bag?
Oh yeah.
20-degree sleeping bag?
Oh yeah. You might be chilly the first couple weeks in Montana, you know.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Larry, the other thing to think about though is if you're going to bivy bag, you're going to be in nature all around you. So I looked at a bivy bag versus just a 1-person tent. And if they're going to be creepy crawlers around me, I'd rather have just at least something between me and them. So you might look at your bivy bag versus just a 1-man tent.
Right. Yeah, I was just wondering about a 20-pound sleeping bag, or a guy can get one that goes down further. Yeah, that's all.
One thing I would definitely recommend with a sleeping bag is a sleeping bag liner. I just had a real thin silk bag that fits inside the sleeping bag, and after you get in your sleeping bag really dirty for many nights in a row, it's really nice to have just this one liner that keeps it cleaner. And then on hot nights, you don't even need your sleeping bag. You just use this little thin liner as your bedding.
All right, thank you very much.
That's a good point.
Did you?
what we did is we had 2 summer bags, but then I also took my winter down bag, which compresses nice. But then when we got to North Dakota, I mailed that home. So then we did the rest of the trip in just, one was just a over bag and the other was just a summer bag. But I didn't want to get snowed out in Montana because you never know what the weather's going to be like.
That's
Not as bad as it used to be, but can get pretty cold.
All right, thanks.
Did you use any general delivery post office service?
We didn't, but we had friends that, as I mentioned before, being a wastewater treatment plant professional, I knew some people in Williston, and we spotted supplies in Williston and also in Bismarck, an engineering firm. So we had friends, but we did not mail things to ourselves.
I had a few packages mailed along the way. I tried to get them sent to actual marinas because they keep more convenient hours than the post office. But I did, just call them ahead of time, tell them what you're doing, and they're super happy to receive the package for you and hold it for you for a few days. I did use the post office in Chamberlain, South Dakota, which worked out fine, but you're at the mercy of their hours to pick up the package.
Right. Okay.
Questions? Keep them going.
Did you guys, did anybody have different gear for clothing for camp? I mean, I was trying to think about like trying to keep the stuff out of my tent and sleeping bag, like you're saying. Or did you guys just, whatever you were wearing on the boat, that's what you wore until you went to bed?
Gary and Linda.
I basically had, and Gary too, we had the clothes that we wore while we were paddling, and that was pretty much just one set of clothes. There was another set of clothes that we had that we could change into if we wanted to. So usually that was a little cleaner than the stuff that we wore during the day. And so it was the same kind of clothes, but it was whatever was cleanest.
Okay.
Went to town.
If you had to go see people, you would change into your clean clothes.
Right. Okay.
I'd say stash a pair of socks in your sleeping bag. Speaking from not the Missouri River experience, but many rivers, I have a sacred pair of clean socks that never leaves the bottom of my sleeping bag, and they make me so happy.
Yep.
Yeah, in 2004, I wore the same pants, shorts, and shirt for 6 months, and I just wash it off in the river every few days and rinse it, and then, but at night I'd throw a fleece or something a little warmer and a face or a ski cap, keep my bald head warm.
Quite often when it was hot, we had this blue bucket, and that was to carry water for whatever. And so we'd fill that up and put a little bit of the soap that doesn't make any difference. That's the biodegradable soap. So if you do it just because you feel like it's making a difference. I would soak my clothes overnight sometimes when it was hot, put them on wet in the morning, and they'd be dry within an hour. And you felt a little cleaner for about an hour, but that was it. It's a lost cause.
Good questions. Keep them coming.
I got one. So
yep, go for it.
I just might as well pull the group. So like I said, I'm still in my fact finding, kind of just throwing ideas around. I'm considering taking a modified drift boat, and some of my biggest concerns are obvious portages around. So whether or not I would put in a little further down, or just in general, polling the group, would you see that as a feasible idea, even rowing a modified drift boat the whole way?
Did you send me a message like a week ago and I linked you up with Blake Miller?
I'm not sure if you linked me up with Blake Miller, but yeah, we corresponded a bit.
Yeah, Blake actually did it in a modified drift boat last year, the one that he made.
Okay.
And you should touch base and look at his Facebook page, because he's been, he posts all his pictures of the boat.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll have any.
Did he set up his own portages and trucks and all that? Because
he's he's actually from Montana too. He's from Big Fork. So he knew he had help from his family through the state of Montana. So the first few dams, but then I think he didn't have an issue at any of the other places with people. Because as you know, a lot of those reservoirs are popular fishing places, and everybody's got a trailer that's usually willing to help.
Get this over with. William, what's the weight of that drift boat?
So it's wood. It's between 400 and 500 pounds.
Oh,
yeah, and that's unloaded. So and it's a 17-foot long.
Yeah,
it's a big boat.
Another question.
Yeah. Well, I posted a question about portaging because my boat is 200 pounds and you can't just throw it in the back of a pickup truck. And I already had 2 people say, "Yep, I'll help you. Just give me a call when let us know when you get close." So I mean, I think if you just even post on there like specifically this, this portage right here, I need help with. I think I'm going to need help with. You might be able to get some people that'll volunteer right away.
Yeah. And that PDF list of all the river angels I mentioned, if you call them a week out and say, "Hey, this is the size of my boat. Can you help me with this size?" And they may say, "Oh no, but my uncle's got a boat trailer. I'll use that," kind of thing. Yeah, I don't think you have any issues. So just to go back on a couple of questions, Amanda sent me a text. She says she was having communication problems. All right, so she left the end of June, I think, of last year. And she said the only issue with low water was the beginning of Lake Oahe, which was the low water was the most apparent. She said it was lots of back and forth and staying in the channel when in normal levels you could go straight because it was all flooded like a lake. And then I don't know what this is. I think it's a gun. She said I carried a P395 but I traveled stealth. My camps are stealth to avoid any issues. So.
Oh, hey, there it is.
Okay. What did you guys do for weather forecasts while you're on the river? Or was it just looking at the sky?
That's a good one. Good. Gary, Linda.
We used our cell phones, kept an eye on the radar, kept an eye on any weather forecasts that were coming in, but we didn't rely solely on that. We found that the weather was very different in the prairies than it was in Michigan, that we couldn't count on storms to behave the same way at all, that they'd come up quickly, or you could spend hours waiting for them to come. You just didn't know. We found, we were talking about camping at boat ramps. When there were heavy storms forecast after an experience we had, we would sometimes look for boat ramps to camp at. And that's because in the prairies, the pit toilets, well, we call them pit toilets here in Michigan, they call them vault toilets. They're made of cement with steel roofs. And we ended up one night spending about an hour in one of them while a tornado blew over us. And after that, when the weather got bad, we thought, boy, it sure would be nice to have one of those toilets to shelter in if we had to. Never had to again, but it made us, we went through a period, Jim remembers that, where there were storms like every other night, and you would watch for them, and we would communicate back. If there were any other paddlers, if you're going to be going down at the same time, get in touch with each other. When a storm came through, we'd turn on the phone, and there would be Jim leaving a message saying, "Are you guys okay?" And we would do that to the other people who were going down the river, and we kind of watch over each other and give each other advice.
Okay.
It's exciting.
Yeah, those storm fault toilets are all tornado shelters. And didn't you get out of that one in that campground and find there was a motorhome or two that had been blown into the lake?
Yeah, and this was a storm that wasn't predicted. So we had gone ahead and we were sleeping. It was about midnight, and we didn't even know that there was a storm coming, but somebody from a campground nearby drove up in a pickup truck and said, "Hey guys, don't want to wake you up, but there's a huge storm coming through. And if I were you, I'd make a run for that toilet." And so we did. We ran up there. Actually, I went up there first while Gary tried to put a few more stakes in the tent. And by the time he looked up, he couldn't even see, but I had my headlamp on, so he could see the headlamp. And he came running up, and we sat in that pit toilet and just looked at each other and listened to all hell break loose outside. Got out, and our tent was down. We ended up taking a couple of days to get some more parts for the tent. But yeah, we took a tour with, actually, we got out of the toilet and walked down to look at the remains of our tent puddled on the ground. And another pickup drove up, and a guy took us to his cottage and took us in at 2:30 in the morning. And then the next morning we drove around, and the guy that came down to warn us barely got back to his camper in time to get his, I think his kids and his grandkids out of it before whatever it was, the tornado or the strong winds, lifted his camper up and dumped it into the river. So it was pretty dramatic.
Wow.
Yeah, the weather's the biggest, I think, fear.
You know, the VHF marine radios, they all, I don't have one yet, but they all advertise that they have, you know, weather warnings on there. So is that something that, I mean, I don't know how does it work. Does it start beeping or something if there's an alert in your area, or how does anybody know how that works?
Mark?
Yeah, I had a cheapish radio that I brought along, and it had the weather channels on there. And so if you tune into the weather bands, it just repeats the forecast for your area where you're at every so often. So I use that quite a bit when I didn't have phone reception, and that was very helpful.
Okay.
What about phone reception? How good a coverage? I guess not much on a lot of those reservoirs, but
yeah.
Is there any provider better than the other? Is Verizon better than AT&T or any of them?
I'm not sure. I had T-Mobile the whole way, and it was pretty spotty early on going through Montana and North Dakota, but after that I had it pretty much all the time. But even in Montana going through, I was able to get coverage like every 2 or 3 days. I seemed to get some coverage and get updated on a couple things. So yeah.
Jimmy Manuel, what cell coverage you have? Jim,
what'd you say?
Did you bring a cell phone? What kind of coverage did you have?
I had Verizon, and pretty limited going through from Cold Bank down to Fort Peck Dam.
Yeah.
After that, it was pretty good. But I also had a spot, and I would get texts from people to let me know if storms were coming. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember the guy's name right now. I was camped up on Upper Fort Peck, and he texted me and goes, "Boy, you're going to be really fucked tonight because a big tornado's coming your way." And I could see it coming. And it went around, those prairie storms are here. 5 miles away, you could be in big trouble. And right where you are, you're okay. And this one just, I wasn't out. Some of them hit me, but this one went right around me. And so that spot, you can text on it. And that kind of helped, And then otherwise, you've got your radar on your phone, and then you can actually see it.
Right.
And a lot of them all you could see was red, and it's coming right at you. Then it's time to put out some more stakes and hold on.
Yeah.
Anybody have issues with lightning while they're on one of the reservoirs?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of storms you go through, and you're looking out your tent, and you would think that you're in a disco. It's just solid light.
Bismarck.
And, you know, not much you can do with, you know, not being on the water then, but just in camp.
Mhm.
Alan, are you bringing a spot or in-reach locator?
Yeah, I have an inReach that I just turned on a week ago, or so I'm still learning how to use it. But
Can you receive messages?
yeah, we can receive texts.
Because like Jim was saying, I highly recommend that because it works no matter if there is no cell coverage.
Right.
If you got some friends that or family or whatever that are linked up to that, and or even me, they could send you, say, hey, there's a tornado coming your way, because we can get on Doppler. In fact, that happened a bunch last year when Nick Early and what's the other guy in the yellow kayak that went last year? Oh, they were right in it near Williston. It was bad. The one guy got lifted up out of his tent and thrown 30 feet, broke all his poles. And I mean, yeah, I don't know. Those spots are a lifesaver in I think more ways than one, especially if you end up in the water.
I think this one even has a weather forecasting or weather warning system on it. I saw that on the menu, weather, so.
Yeah.
Alan, inReach has weather. You just have to go online. There's a good course you can take to fire you up on your inReach.
Okay.
Question?
Did anybody have like a pocket first aid guide or some kind of small pamphlet for first aid that they took?
I didn't. But I've had first aid, you know what I mean? It just a basic kit. I don't think I had anything special in that kit. In trips I've taken in Canada, though, I've had a personal friend who was a doctor that gave me prescription for painkillers and Giardia and massive infection, you know, case, but that was remote in Canada. I wouldn't worry about anything like that. And
okay,
just brush up on your first aid and bring a good first aid kit. I think you'll be fine. And a lot of that stuff, you know, you can download like the American First Aid Manual to your phone and just have it on a PDF file.
Yeah.
Save you a lot of.
Oh yeah.
Any other questions? Anybody else?
How about solar chargers? Mark, did you use any solar chargers for any of your gear?
Yeah, I brought one of those folding 3-panel solar chargers, and I used it a fair bit during the first half of the trip, but
did it work well for you?
It worked well. It ended up getting water in it and started rusting. It was I went with the cheaper brand. I think if you get the I forgot the name of the brand, but the
Goal
name brand. What's that? Goal Zero.
Zero.
Yeah.
But after that, I had a few of the big rechargeable battery bricks, and every few days I was able to find a place to charge those, and that worked out fine too.
That's what I was wondering, if the solar chargers would be worth it if you could find somewhere to charge the bricks up. And you didn't have a problem finding places to charge the bricks up?
No, solar panels probably more of a nice to have, not a need to have, I'd say.
Just to comment on the solar, when I did it in 2004, the technology was a lot different then than what I use. But I do want to, so I won't comment on what I use because it's so much better now. But what I did do was always have those extra plug adapters. So if you are in town or at the laundromat or at a boat ramp, a lot of them have a plug that you could, you know, if you're stopped for a lunch or whatever. I even got one that was, you know, where you unscrew the bulb and then you put in a pronger. Some of the shelters at the campground, they don't have plugs, but they got a light, and I would unscrew the light.
Wow, that's
plug
a good
in,
point.
and I would
That's a good point.
Steal power that way. Yeah, I tried to just keep stuff powered up whenever I could. So, Keith, did you have a solar panel? You're muted. Keith. All right. Keith, we can't hear you. Somebody ask a question. I'll try to get Keith.
Yeah, I got it.
Go ahead.
I had a Anchor solar panel at 18 watt and had 2 battery packs. And I would charge those during the day. It was an Anchor, is a cheap solar panel. I'd fold it out, and at night I'd charge my phone, my radio. I had a little Bluetooth speaker system and my inReach, and I never had a problem. I never hardly ever had to use my second battery, and I use that all the way to the Gulf. I hardly ever charged at an outlet. That thing would charge as fast as an outlet. And I still have that today. It's just like it was just like it was when I left. And it was on the top of my boat for 120 days. It's an Anchor, ANKOOR, I believe. So I had no problems with it.
Gary and Linda, did you guys use solar?
Yeah, I always had solar panels, but I didn't use them very much. Seemed like it was always a cloudy day, and I had things dangling around on the top of the boat. I didn't have such a solid system like Jim did, and so we would just kind of look for a plug someplace and take a long lunch and pirate off a bunch of electricity, charge things up, and then you're real careful about what you're burning up to. It electric power is one of your consumables, and you've got to manage that and watch how you're drawing that down. And then if it gets too low, then you got to look for a way to either plug in or take some time to charge them.
So Keith texted because his audio is, he had a Goal Zero.
Yeah, I actually had myself on mute there, Norm, and I had a nice Goal Zero that I unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to use for the first half of the trip until a kind soul mailed it to me in Missouri. So I had it for the last half of my trip. So it was really, for me, it worked out great because I was able to charge my phone every night using it.
Cool.
And I had one of the 3 panels, and I just threw it on. I had a canoe, so I used my tarp, and I would use my tarp as almost a shield, if you will, for the boat. And I just threw it on top of the tarp, and I'd be able to charge my phone once a day. So
nice. Did you use your tarp while you were canoeing for shade? Is that what you're saying?
No, I used what's the word I'm looking for here, Norm? That you like cover. I used it almost as like a cover for my boat, right? No, I didn't use it for shade.
Okay.
What's that? I'm sorry, I missed repeat your question. What was that?
I asked if he used his tarp while he was on the water for shade.
Oh. You know what?
No, I used the tarp to cover my contents within the canoe, and then just threw this solar panel on top of that.
Yeah.
People have laughed, and I've suggested this, and they get to the end, they go, "Oh my God, that was the best advice I had. Bring a Gulf umbrella." Because you won't have any trees basically from the time you leave Kip till you get to almost Yankton. So if you want to sit around and enjoy your lunch under some shade, bring an umbrella. And it's also nice too, because a lot of times in the summer, we'll get these quick rainstorms that come in. Well, being in Montana, they last 5 minutes. And then you're not have to dig your rain gear out, put it on, just blow the umbrella up, let it rain, take it off, and then you're not taking the gear off. And mainly for a nice bit of shade. I think, Mark, didn't you use one on your trip? Didn't I talk you into it?
Yeah, you did. It was many uses, shade, rain, and I actually sailed with it a few days too.
Great.
Questions?
I was wondering if anyone used any of those like wheel carts for your canoe or your kayak. I saw pictures where some people have used them in the past. I don't plan on like walking the portage myself most of the time, but was there any use for them if you're planning on catching rides for the most part?
Mark?
Yeah, I brought one of those, I forgot the name brand, but it's a plastic one that breaks down, the wheels come off the base and the pieces and everything. And that was extremely helpful for the smaller dams, mostly self-portaged around some of the smaller dams early on. And then even if you got, you pulled up on shore and you wanted to move your boat a little bit further away from the water or, relocate, it was helpful to have. I used it quite a bit.
Okay, good. Good to know.
Gary and Linda, do you have a
The
card?
only other thing I would say to Alan is there is, and Norm, help me out here. There's a section, I think it's on Oahe, where you're paddling, and it's unlike any other location on any of the lakes, where all these rocks just jet out, and there's like it's almost like a big rock garden. And the reason why I mention this is because Dominic, who paddled from Canada to New Orleans, real famous paddler, he actually was using a sail, and I guess the wind was so strong that he almost ran into that rock garden, which would have been problematic. So just be aware of that one section on Oahe. I forget exactly where it was, but I remember it. Or it may even be Lake Sharp. May not even be Oahe. It might be Lake Sharp.
Was it near the shore or just like in the middle?
Middle to River Right, or Lake Right, I should say. I want to say maybe it was even on Sharp. I could be mistaken.
Okay.
But I'm sure Dave Miller has it documented in his book. Just be, cognizant of that if it's a real windy day.
Yeah.
Gary and Linda, did you have a cart at all?
Yes, I always have a cart because I always say I'll paddle 1,000 miles, but I hate to walk a quarter mile. And I hate to carry my boat even more. But I always have wheels, but then on the Missouri, I think I only used them once. That first carry at Toston, I think I used them. And then every other time we found a river angel that moved our boat and our gear for us. But I'd still take them along. I had it's aluminum frame, and then they're solid wheels that go on it. So I don't have to worry about a flat tire.
Yeah, I had one in 2004 too. I used it probably half the time and then got to ride the other half, but they're nice to have. Any other questions?
Let's see, he's got so many on this page.
Well, this one's more on the Mississippi though, but yeah. What about when you get down close to the Gulf, camping and alligators? Because we actually went all the way. We took a trip when we bought our boat in Florida, and we hauled it back up here. We went all the way to the end of the Mississippi, to the very end. And I mean, there were alligators like on the sides of the roads and stuff. So just wondering if anybody had any experience camping in alligator country.
Jim and Keith. Jim, did you have any issues with gators?
No, I saw alligators from about Vicksburg on down. And the thing about camping on the lower Mississippi is the nicest camping you'll ever have anywhere you go. There's beaches that were 5 miles long and a half mile wide, and you're the only one on it. Every inside bed, in lower water has this incredibly nice beach.
Okay.
And I actually got off on the Atchafalaya above Baton Rouge and went down that way, and then there was gators everywhere. And not a lot of places to camp, but there were places where you could get out of the swamp and get up on a sandbar. So I did not go through New Orleans. And you get down to Atchafalaya, there's all kinds of gators, and they didn't bother us.
Keith?
Just weren't tasty enough, I guess.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, on the Red River, which is the same thing as the Atchafalaya, it just changes names at the dam. I was going upstream, and yeah, there's quite a few gators, and I know Andy's had quite a bit of experience with gators as well. But they're they're harmless. They are spooked when they're aware of your presence. That was my experience. So, I wouldn't be overly concerned about them.
So when
Okay.
Gary and I did the Mississippi, we went down through New Orleans and ended up at the Gulf. And, we hardly saw any gators. And like Jim said, the camping there, for the most part, until you get a ways down south of New Orleans, the camping is just the best you will ever have. I absolutely love that part of the trip. You would have these gorgeous sandbars, and we never saw alligators. Our theory was that because we were in the current in the Mississippi, that's not where the alligators wanted to be. They wanted to be back in the bayous where the hunting was better. I'm sure they were there, but they never bothered us. If the camping though, south of New Orleans was more difficult. There weren't sandbars there. You were close to the bayous. We could find a little spot for our tent usually, but it was challenging.
Yeah, when we drove down there, I mean, it's just basically like 20-foot levees or 25-foot levees. It's just a big hill, and there's the river, and then there's no flat spot next. Yeah.
Our last night of camping, we found there was a ferry near one of the towns. And so we stopped at the ferry dock and started asking around and our rule is always, whenever we're going to camp in a place that we're pretty sure is illegal, we ask someone for permission, but it's usually not somebody who has the right to give us permission. It's usually somebody that will say, oh, sure, you're not going to be a problem. And then when the cops come up, we say, oh, somebody told us we could camp here. Sorry. So we ended up camping right next to the ferry dock. And then we made it to Venice, so he stayed there.
He stayed in a hotel in Venice.
Yeah.
What'd you do with your boat then?
Yeah, what'd you do with your boat after you?
It was a marina, so we could tie it up in the marina and stay in a hotel.
Well, I mean, how did you transport your boat when the trip was?
Our daughter drove down from Chicago with our car and met us.
Okay.
Except what we did was Gary chartered a boat to pick us up at mile marker 0. And then we threw the kayak on the boat and then went back to Venice and drove back from there.
It was very expensive. Most people don't do that. I think it cost us $400 to get a guy to come and pick us up. And I think very few people do that. They'll find other ways. They'll just hitchhike. They'll just stand there and look pathetic, and some boat will come by and give them a ride. That's your best bet. Because it's easy to look pathetic when you're standing down all by yourself.
Yeah.
Well, down there, as far as current goes, how hard would it be to turn around and sail back up to New Orleans?
There's a lot of current down there. It's the most current we ran into on the whole.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Go for it. You can do it.
Oh.
Well, there's what's that cutoff that goes west that people use?
That's the Atchafalaya that Jim took. Yeah, Amanda actually took that too this year when she did it.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the current is less on that.
I think so. Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't been down there, so.
You could do it though. Ellen McDonough paddled almost all the way back to Venice pretty easily. Well, I don't know if it was easily, but she did it.
I was thinking we could sail back up.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe we'll just keep going to Florida.
No. Yeah, symphony concert.
Okay. I think that's.
How about one more question? Anybody?
Camp chair.
What's the latest on the rendezvous, Norm? I'm not on Facebook.
Yeah, speaking of the rendezvous, those that are going on the river this year, I know it's hard to time your trip, but we're going to have our second ever rendezvous starting at Fort Randall Dam and going to South Sioux City, Nebraska, July 30th through August 6th. And there should be 80 paddlers or so, and probably 80% of them have done the whole river. I think everybody on here is gonna be. Gary and Linda, you gonna be there? I hope.
Not sure yet.
Not sure
You
yet.
gotta,
Not sure yet.
you guys gotta go. I want to paddle with you.
Well, we're hoping to do more paddling this year. Things are looking up as far as physical ability, but not sure. Not sure. It'd be nice.
Well, I appreciate everybody joining in. I think this turned out pretty good.
Yeah, I really.
Yeah, Norm, thanks for putting it together.
You know what I recommend too, someone else brought it up too, is all you guys that are doing the river this year or whatever, get each other's texts. That way you can kind of keep in touch on the river. If one of you is 3 days ahead, you know, you can relay some good information, you know, like so-and-so's got the best pizza, or there's no longer water at this campground kind of thing. It's kind of nice to have the most up-to-date, accurate information, and that being whoever's immediately ahead of you.
So actually, I did talk to the Fort Benton BLM people and just a couple days ago, and they said that the KIP, even if it's not potable, it's well water, and you can treat it or filter it.
Yeah. Okay.
But you'll have to do something to it.
Yeah.
Boil it or whatever.
Yeah.
So we could get people's information, phone, text and stuff through the paddlers group.
Yep. And I'll put a list together. Everybody that was here, and then anybody that wants that PDF file of all the River Angels and contact information, send me a personal message too.
Okay.
And I'll send that out. And we can do this again too if you want to do it in another month.
Sounds good.
I would like to.
We have more questions on our list.
Well,
You don't have
we'll
to
have
ask them.
more by then.
Well, it relates to like bringing what food to bring and stuff, and we're dehydrating now. We can bring and stuff like that.
Yeah. So
How much cooking people did and how much just add hot water or whatever. What's the easiest?
Jim will supply you with walleye.
Yeah.
Oh,
Unless
did
he
it-
brings his dog.
did anybody have issues with being hit by carp?
I've heard of it happening on the Mississippi. Wasn't there that guy that went down a year ago that actually lost his eye?
Wow.
So
We got hit by a carp once. We got hit by a carp once on the Illinois, and it can be pretty scary when a motorboat will come by. It'll look like a snowstorm with the fish jumping.
Oh,
But
how big are they?
Well,
I don't think we saw any jumping on the Missouri or the lower Mississippi.
You could get into them on the lower half of the Missouri, but it's behind the wing dikes down here in the slack water. As long as you stay out of the slack water down here, they don't seem to be too much of an issue.
Okay.
Good to know. Write that down.
Yeah. What we're saying.
Oh, right. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks. Thanks
Yeah,
all.
thanks, everybody. It was a good time. Good to
you.
meet everybody.
And Jim, I am going to talk to you more about walleye up there.
Yeah, you got to pretty good
Yeah.
walleye fishing on Peck and
Yeah.
Hawaii and Sakakawea. So
Yeah, I'll have some. I'll be tagging you for lure choices and whatnot when I get up there.
okay.